Trump didn't have enough battles, which he doesn't even know he has, but he's also at war with his niece, Mary Trump, which is an interesting book that I am in the middle of. She gave her first interview on this tell-all book to George Stephanopoulos earlier this week, and she's going to be on our show Thursday next week. We know Trump must have been concerned because this is firsthand information. She wrote it, really to stop him from becoming president. At the time, the thoughts in the book were about, how awful he was before he ran for president. But she didn't publish it then. But she's doing it now. Anyway, how is he handling the release of the book? Do you happen to know?
Well, I'm told he's deeply frustrated about it. He obviously tried really hard to stop the book from coming out. He even enlisted his younger brother, Robert Trump. Trump's upbringing, his family, there's very little that he's ever really talked about. We know that Mary's father, his older brother, Fred, died, related to alcoholism. Well, the president's occasionally talked about that, but he almost never talks about his upbringing. There's very little known, and he's had nothing to say publicly about this. He's answered very few questions since this book came out. I tried to ask him. He clearly heard me. This was the day it came out. I yelled out, any reaction, very simply, any reaction to your niece, Mary's book, and he completely ignored me, walked out. At that Rose Garden event we were talking about, I wanted to ask another question. I think he figured I might ask about her. He did not call on me. He did not take any questions. He hasn't been tweeting about it. He's been amazingly silent about this, which makes me think it really bothers him.
So your tenure as president of the White House Correspondents Association has ended, and you've worked with 14 different press secretaries in all different administrations. You just wrote also an op-ed on this for the Washington Post. What do you say in the op-ed that we should know?
Well, I'm concerned that the White House briefings have become political events. I have kind of maybe a naive, old-fashioned notion that the White House press secretary is a public servant, paid for by the taxpayers, and the job is to provide information about what the president is doing and what the executive branch is doing, but not to be a political spokesperson. You are not the spokesperson for a campaign or a political party. You do represent the president's views to the press, but you also have a duty to inform the American people through the press, which most people get most of their information from. And these press conferences have become an effort to vilify the press, to try to discredit the press, and not to really give much information, but to give a political message of the day. And I wouldn't normally pick a fight with a White House press secretary, but except on an issue I'm asking about in a briefing. But this concerns me not so much for what's happening now, but I hope this doesn't become the way going forward. We have to get back to the notion that the White House press secretary is ultimately a public servant and not a political spokesperson.
Well, I suspect that won't happen until we can remind the guy in the White House that he works for us. And once he gets that through his head, maybe he can pass it down to everybody else who's working with him. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, Jonathan Karl. Just keep coming back, okay? Please check out his book, Front Row at the You Know Who Show.